Hello and welcome to Honest Faith Conversations. Probably one of the last times I'm going to be saying that. As we are changing our name, look below for the survey to vote on your favorite name or on social media. We'll talk about that later. But as always, I am your co-host, Miguel Covarrubias.
And I am Kathy Covarrubias. And today we're going to talk about our top 10 favorite podcast episodes of 2017.
So as always, welcome. And there are no spoiler alerts for this episode unless you haven't listened to all of our podcast episodes. But even then, there's no spoilers.
No spoilers, no.
And Happy New Year. Happy 2018. So this is our first episode of 2018. It will go into our first season for 2017, which includes all the way back to December of 2016. But, there it is. And welcome and Happy New Year. So
yeah, Happy New Year. This might actually be a good episode for you if you haven't really listened to all of our podcasts and you're not quite sure which ones you should listen to. Maybe this list will help you out and figure out, where you should go to next.
Where you should start.
Yeah.
So do you want to do a brief summary of our year and a review of our year of podcasting?
Sure. You go first. You suggested it.
My brief summary of 2017 of our podcast would be, we watched a lot of Netflix and talked about the moral philosophy points that we found in Netflix shows and movies over 2017.
Not just Netflix.
Not just Netflix, but there was a lot of Netflix in there. So.
Yeah. My review, let's see. I guess our podcast consists of two strapping young folks who like to watch movies and talk about them via the internet.
All right. My review is that I really enjoy doing it. So it's something that it really fills that niche for me where, I used to write lessons for youth group. And this is what I did for youth group. I really found things that inspired me in movies and TV and pop culture that I would use to teach the youth about spirituality. And so it really, this is really what I like to do. And so it really has been an outlet for me. So it's been great. I really enjoy doing this with you. And
shucks.
Having people listen to us is also great, even though it's only like 13 people, but
we love you.
We love you guys. We appreciate your voting on our thing. We have 18 responses as of right now. And we'll talk about that a little bit later on in the podcast. But that's my review of the year. Is that I think it's growing. We're definitely newbies at it, but it's getting better.
Yeah, I mean, with more experience, we're going to get better. So that's what happens when you practice.
Yes.
I have also enjoyed it. I think it's also a great excuse to actually get out and watch new things. So we could be like, we have to, because, we have to do it for our podcast. We have to watch the newest movie that's come out because we have to do it for our podcast.
Yes, for our loyal listeners.
Mm-hmm. Yep. So thanks to you, we actually haven't gone to the movie theaters very much this year, but I think definitely we've gone more than we would have if we didn't have you guys to blabber on about.
Yes. Two.
Not
about.
Yes.
Because we don't talk about our listeners.
No, that's true.
That often.
So.
No. Because we don't really know who is our listeners and who aren't.
No. So that's why you should join our Facebook group.
Yes, exactly. We have one person in our Facebook group that is not us at the moment. So, and she doesn't say much. So, with all that being said, we're going to be running down our top 10 lists of our favorite episodes of 2017. I did not pull clips because we didn't get any suggestions from you guys. And so next year, maybe in 2018, we'll get some suggestions, or 2019, we'll get some suggestions from you guys of which your favorite podcast episodes of whatever our podcast will be called at that time. and we'll be using that. And maybe you guys will call in sometime this year. That's a New Year's resolution for our podcast, is to have at least one listener call in to our voicemail hotline and leave us a voicemail.
Yes.
Even if it's one of us. We got a voicemail from one of our listeners. It's one of us. So, with that being said, let's jump right into it. So,
okay. You're first.
I'm first. At number 10 for me is our introduction episode. I put it in my top 10 list here because I think it explains what we're doing pretty well, and how I view faith. Is that I don't view faith in the very traditional concept of trusting kind of idea, but I see it more as a longing, as a homesickness for a place that you've never been. And that's ultimately what I find our podcast is doing, is we're finding our homesickness points for each of these worlds that we jump into, and we talk about it. Each week we talk about what were the things that made us like this, what were the things that made us think through this piece of pop culture, and why we would return to that world for whatever reason. And so that's why you will see in our name survey some of the world hopping things that I've put in there for names. But yeah, our introduction episode was my number 10. So.
I like how you are trying to persuade their vote.
I am not trying to persuade the vote.
But you kind of are.
I am not. I'm just saying that's the reason why those are in there.
Okay. Moving on.
Hey, we already said that there is no wrong reason for your top 10 list.
No, I'm totally okay with that being number 10. I'm just saying you shouldn't persuade people's votes.
I am not persuading people's votes.
Okay, sure.
Number 9 is Shimmer Lake. And the reason why I chose Shimmer Lake was not particularly because of what we were doing in the podcast, not what we were talking about, but I think it's really when we hit our stride as podcasters, as the show. It's really where we went from just being more about, kind of teaching about philosophers who came up with the idea first on these things, and more about how it relates to real life. Mm-hmm. It became more of the hermeneutical approach that we should have been doing all along. And so that's why it's my number 9, is because I think that's where we kind of hit, our stride as podcasters, as our couple doing our thing instead of where we were before.
Okay.
Number 8 for me was Spider-Man. And the reason why Spider-Man was because I really felt like we had a good conversation on that. We really kind of thought about what we were talking about. We thought about Spider-Man a good deal.
Well, and the villain, too. We mentioned
the
villains quite a bit.
We did mention the villains quite a bit. And the reason why was because they were fully fleshed out characters, as I talked about last week with our first episode on Black Mirror Season 4. Is that, it's important to have a fully fleshed out character. It's important to really kind of, think about what, you're writing and who you're writing about and why. Mm-hmm. So, Spider-Man was a great conversation for me. It was really one of my favorites in there. Number 7 would be Split. Not just because I couldn't pronounce Shyamalan Ding Dong.
You know how to pronounce his name. Don't even pretend.
Shyamalan.
Don't even pretend you don't know how.
Mr. Knight.
Okay.
All right. But because I think we had a good conversation about mental health in there. We had a good conversation about seeing the signs of somebody and not just, playing along to play along with somebody. I think we had a good conversation about abuse and other things throughout that. So that was one of my favorites. Number 6 would be Mr. Robot Season 1. The reason why I chose Mr. Robot Season 1 for that was that we had a good conversation about our economy and a good conversation about how some of the things that we think are the right way to go about things are not always the best way to do it. And we talked about the aftermath, of course, in season 2, but I think for season 1, I think we did set the stage pretty well for season 2, and I really did enjoy Mr. Robot season 1. I think that that episode of ours and the whole season of that show was fantastic.
Okay.
Number 5 would be Stranger Things Season 2. The reason why is that I really enjoyed our talk about Community in that, and how the roles kind of shift in Community. And I had one of my friends, Doug, actually...
well, he's a listener, too, isn't he?
Yeah, he's a listener.
Hey,
and
Doug.
Hi, Doug. And Doug messaged me after he listened to that and said, I think you're really right on how community dynamics really kind of change after certain events like that. And, I really did enjoy that. I really enjoyed talking about it. And I really enjoyed kind of thinking about it as we were thinking about what to talk about for Stranger Things Season 2.
Yeah. Was
thinking about how the dynamics did shift dramatically, and especially in my own life with the dynamics with the communities that I served in shifting dramatically, and with just everything that I've went through is that trying to build my own community has been really trying to figure that out, and I think that episode helped me as much as it helped anybody who listened. So
okay.
All right. And the top 4 now. Number 4 would be Babadook. And the reason why I chose Babadook for it was I think we had a good conversation about grief, about letting go of things. And I think that just watching the movie helps to let go of some grief, even though it's kind of terrifying. Well,
because I think it helps you recognize that you have been holding on to the grief, and you should let it go in a healthy manner.
Yeah, and I think that we did pretty well with research beforehand, with thinking about it and what we were going to be talking about for that week. Number 3 would be Season 3 of Broadchurch. The reason why I chose that one is because I did really like hearing your story and hearing your take on things. And, it was a little hard for me to kind of just not do something about fixing things, because that's who I am. And I think that may be a very a traditional masculine thing is wanting to fix a problem. It's wanting to fix something when somebody tells you about it. And I think that for me, it really did help to just kind of sit there and listen to your story and to listen to what you had to say about it. And also just sitting through that season of knowing what people have gone through. And especially at the end of 2017, looking back on all the Me Too and the Church Too campaigns, on how people were abused horribly, and just trying to think of, okay, I'm not here to fix it. I'm not here to do that. I'm here to listen.
Yeah. I mean, there are obviously things that everybody can do to help.
Yeah.
For the future. But just know that there's not much you could do for anything that's happened in the past, besides making sure that the people who were the abusers, finally get what they deserve.
Yeah. And then brings us to number 2. Number 2 would be The Handmaid's Tale. And the reason why Handmaid's Tale is number 2 for our entire season 1 of our podcast is because it helped me to reconnect with my friend Lynn. And that, I was a little starstruck with, yay, I know somebody who's semi-famous. And she actually won awards for it. And it's fantastic. And I think, The Handmaid's Tale alone was just hard to sit through and watch, and knowing that it is one of our most listened to podcasts, is that knowing that people kind of do actually want to hear our take on something.
Yeah.
And that maybe Lynn helped us get a few more listeners in there.
Hey,
but
we'll take it.
Because we did ask her questions, but she only vaguely responded because, she is working on other things at the time being. So
yeah, well, and for her, like her role in it, like was months previous. So
yeah,
like it's not like she had just watched it like we had, and like everything was like fresh in her mind. Like this was like as if I were to ask you about your project that you did last year,
Yeah.
So
it's like asking me, how did it feel to write your book in 2016?
Yeah, exactly.
Which, it felt good to finish it, but I really started in 2013, so...
Yeah, so it's understandable that the answer that she gave.
And so, before I get to my number one, I'm going to do an episode that I really wish that I could redo. And to be able to talk about that a little bit more, I am going to let you guys in on a little secret of behind the scenes for the podcast here. Is that behind the scenes in the podcast, when we are not doing super well as a married couple, that during the podcast, we do have a little tendency of punishing the other person.
I do not punish.
By not saying anything. And so...
I feel like somebody's pointing fingers at me.
Hey, I did it too. So it was both of us. But one of the things that this is why I want to redo this episode is because of what I did beforehand. Is that I wanted to apologize first for whatever I did before Doctor Strange. Doctor Strange episode is that one that I would wish that I could do again, because I really think it was an important conversation that we had there, especially with myself, is letting go of who I was as a youth minister. And the reason why I want to redo it is because I do want your input in it. And you didn't really give your input in that episode because of whatever I did beforehand, which is probably not explained well enough.
Yeah, and who knows what it was, but...
Yeah, and if you look back, Doctor Strange is before Shimmer Lake. So, that's where I said we hit our stride. And I think... Shimmer Lake is where we finally had that conversation of, okay, this is what we need to do, is we need to explain, we need to understand what each other is going to be talking about before we actually sit down and start recording.
Yeah, exactly.
So, I want to redo Doctor Strange for that reason, but I know we're not going to redo Doctor Strange. But I think that eventually in the future we'll have something where we come back to that topic.
Yeah, of course. Like... The thing with movies, they tend to repeat the same things over and over again, especially if one theme draws audiences in.
Exactly.
So, yep.
And my number one episode of our entire season 1 of 2017 and a little bit of December 2016 is the OA. And the reason why the OA was my top episode was not just because it is our most listened to episode. It is not because it is our most popular episode, although that has a little bit of something to do with it. The reason why is because I think that that was the one where I felt like the most, oh my gosh, I really need to talk about this. I really need to get this out there somewhere. I need to, and like,
why isn't anybody else talking about it?
I know, and then the fan reaction of some of the ideas that we had was good. And I think what's interesting is that the OA has some of the most rabid fans out there. It's crazy how quickly that grew on the internet. Mm-hmm. Like Reddit, that board grew incredibly fast. The Facebook group grew incredibly fast. Everything for the OA just kind of like went crazy after the few weeks after it was released.
Yeah.
And there are so many fan theories out there. There are so many great things that people have kind of put out there for the OA. But I think my one thing on that was seeing each character as the stages of grief. And I got that in the middle of the night, like epiphany. And so that's why it was my favorite, was because that was when I realized about about this podcast was that I enjoy doing this. Is that this fills the niche of, for me, of what I was doing before was writing those podcasts or writing those lessons for my youth group, writing those things that meant something to me and getting it out there in the world. And that's why I think that's where it started for me, was with the OA.
Yeah.
And so that's why it's my all-time favorite for the season 1 for this last year. So there we go. That is my top 10 list.
Sorry, I tend to clap whenever anything is done because that's what our son does.
Yes.
So, that's his new thing. All right. So you'd be surprised to hear that only a few of what you selected was also what I had selected. Like,
I'm not that surprised. We're two different people.
We are two very different people. And my reasons for why I chose what I did are a little bit different too. But of course, everything is valid. So
yes.
All right. I will start with my number 10 favorite episode. So I chose, and I kind of chose this just because, for the sheer fact that I love this genre. I really do. I chose 10 Cloverfield Lane for number 10. Like, I really love a good suspenseful thriller. Like, really, I do. Mm-hmm. Like, if I could just sit and watch those all the time, I would. But the problem would be I would never sleep.
Well, the thing is, I think that they're better than, like, the gore fest horror movies.
Exactly, yeah, no. Like, gore, like, whatever. Like, anybody could do gore. Like, gore doesn't require too much storytelling. And plus, most people don't remember what the story is because the gore is so ingrained in their memory that that's all they can really focus on and remember. Whereas, like, suspenseful thrillers, they're more about the story and what's going on with the characters and a little bit more involved and thought out, I think.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Even though... Never mind. I'm not going to bring it up because people are going to get mad, so I'm just going to...
Okay.
I'm just going to say I was going to talk bad about a certain movie franchise that comes out about Halloween-ish, like, every other year or so.
Okay.
But that's it.
All right.
Okay. All right. Moving on before I get myself into trouble. Okay. Number 9, I chose Westworld. And I chose Westworld for number 9 because, again, it is something that it kind of, like, tugs on my heartstrings a little bit just because I'm from Montana, so anything that has to do with, like, Westerns, like, I'm, like, kind of drawn into it, even though growing up, like, I hated Westerns just because, like, it was all around me, but now I'm not there anymore. I kind of want it a little bit more back into my life. But Westworld was more than just a Western. It was also sci-fi as well, too.
Which was very much a combining of both of our favorite things.
Yeah.
So.
And at first, like, I heard a few people talking about it, and they said it was good, but I wasn't, like, quite in on it yet. It was more of our friend let us borrow her HBO Go password. Shh, don't tell anybody. And it was just,
we had access to it. The FBI is going to come after us now.
Well, and so we had access to it, and we're like, well, we don't know what else to watch, so why not? And then it kind of just, like, hooked us in. I mean, we could probably do another episode about Westworld and come up with
we will.
Completely, just obviously. But I'm talking about even for season 1, we could do a whole other episode just on season 1 and have brand new content to talk about.
Yeah. Well, that, Westworld was going to be on my list, and it was hard to not put it on my list. But I think, and I gave the reasons why everything made it to my top 10 list.
Yeah.
So that would have been number 11.
Yep. So my number 8 is kind of similar to Westworld as to why I chose it. I chose Logan. Okay. And I remember you specifically saying something about not liking Logan.
No, I said our episode wasn't going to make my top 10 list.
Okay.
That I still enjoyed it. I enjoyed the movie, and I enjoyed talking about it, but it's not one of my top 10 favorite episodes.
Well, I enjoyed it enough to put it on my list. Again, it's one of those, like, it reminds me of a Western. So I enjoyed, like, talking about it, as well as to, like, X-Men is what kind of, like, hooked me into the nerd realm. So it just has a special place in my heart. Like anything to do with X-Men does. So that's the reason why.
Well, I think that one of the problems with doing top 10 lists is that people really begin to feel like you're favoring some things over others, which, we enjoyed almost everything that we watched and talked about this year.
But... Oh, yeah, I know, absolutely. But the thing is with me, like, these are the ones that I really enjoy talking about because they really sparked, I don't know, my love, I guess.
Yeah, well, unless, like, for instance, Iron Fist. We talked about it, but we didn't enjoy it.
Yeah. The episode that shall not be named, but you just did, so
yes.
It's going to come after us now.
Yeah.
So thanks. Thanks for that, Miguel.
Well, we already have Doug getting after us for not doing an episode on The Punisher because we couldn't get through the first episode.
Okay.
We did say we'll get back to it eventually.
Yeah. We'll maybe with a lot of wine.
Yeah. All right.
Okay, sorry, moving on. So then after Logan, number 7 is Harry Potter. Because I really love to talk about Harry Potter, and I could just go on and on and on. If you guys haven't noticed, I sometimes bring up Harry Potter in just, like, random episodes that have nothing to do with, like, magic or the Harry Potter realm. But, yeah, do I have to explain why? I mean, I think just enough said. I just love Harry Potter.
Okay.
Okay. I'm going to cry a little bit if I continue, so I'm just moving on. Okay, number 6 for me was our Wonder Woman episode. And I think that it's really important to talk about that simply because Wonder Woman proved to Hollywood that a female lead in a superhero movie can actually be, like, profitable, especially when they have good writers and they have good directors. Not
just a female lead, but a female director.
Yes.
And writer.
Yes.
Like she did fantastic with Thor, but, nobody really realized, a woman directed this.
Yes.
Wonder Woman was straight up, like, saying, no, women are equal.
Well, maybe it goes to show that women should write and direct women superhero movies.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, do we have to talk about, Catwoman and Elektra? Like,
no. Those
movies were just so bad. And I wanted them to so be so good, but they were just terrible. But this, like, if Captain Marvel is anything like Wonder Woman, like, I will die happy.
Okay.
Okay. Anyway, that's... So my number 5... And I think this has to do more with the social impact that it had, because it did cause a lot of, like, social commentary and just, like, the whole, like, across the country, was Get Out. Again, another suspenseful thriller, but that's not why I chose it. I believe that we talked about some really important issues that a lot of people in this country think are non-issues anymore.
Yeah.
Like racism. And this year especially has proven that's not the case. Racism is definitely alive and well today. And
we took a few steps back after 45 was elected.
Yeah, well, I don't think that we necessarily took steps back. What I think is what happened is they were always there. They were just more visible.
They're more visible now is what you're saying.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah. Because they feel like they can come out of the shadows, whereas before they knew they had to stay in the shadows because people would call them out.
Yeah. All right.
Yeah. And then plus, also awesome script, like awesome director, like just around, it was just a great movie anyway.
Yep.
So, number 4. Now, you had this on yours too, so I'm glad you had it on yours too. Broadchurch Season 3. And again, I think it was similar to you, that it was, again, a very important topic, especially with the Me Too and Church Too hashtags going around there. But I also think it was important for us to remind people that the way Broadchurch handled a rape case is a complete 180 to how it really is handled in the real world. like, they took her seriously. They wanted to go ahead and take him down. Whereas in the real world, it just gets brushed aside.
Well, and real world, I think you're meaning the United States. I'm not sure if in Britain if they actually do that whole process of believing the victim as well. But, I mean, if they do, that's fantastic.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, that's what I meant in the real world, as in, like, the United States. But again, it's still important to talk about.
Yep.
And then my number 3, you also had it on your list, so we're getting closer.
All right.
Of course, Handmaid's Tale. Yep. And again, your same thing, like, we actually had like a somewhat of a connection to Handmaid's Tale. Not somewhat, like, we had a connection to Handmaid's Tale.
Yeah.
As well as it being kind of perfect timing.
Oh, yes. Perfect timing.
Which they didn't plan. Like, Handmaid's Tale had been in the works, like, even before, Trump was the Republican nominee.
Yeah.
So it had been in the works, like, way beforehand. So it's not like they had planned this out as this big, like, resist campaign.
Yeah.
It just kind of, like, happenstance happened.
Yeah, and it's great when those things happen, and that's the problem with movies and with other pieces of media and pop culture, is that they're in development way before anything actually happens.
Yeah.
And so it's very hard for them to be topical because, it doesn't happen that way.
Yeah, or like the ones that do seem very have topical bits into it.
Yeah.
Sometimes they do reshoots in order to kind of
exactly
put that in there. Also, Get Out was another one that came out at good timing too.
Oh yeah, and it was extremely well, and it was a lot of jabs at what people were saying during the Obama administration, but I think that it really did help to shine a light on some of the things that people were doing.
Yeah.
So.
Yep, absolutely. So I wanted to go back to Get Out and say that real quick.
Okay.
Give it its due awesomeness. My number 2, and again, this is one of those episodes that I could just keep talking about because I feel like we did discuss, like, good topics in it, but I wish we could discuss more, and I want to do another episode on the current season. But that is Legion.
On season 1?
Season 1, yep.
Yeah. Oh, so that's both your number 2 and one you want to do over again?
No.
Okay.
No. This is, like, in addition to. I don't want to do that one over again. I want to keep it as it is.
Okay.
Just add to it.
Well, I think that if anything about season 1 is that I would like to fix the audio because we were sitting in the middle of the floor on that one, and
yeah,
the reverb is bad. So.
Well, what are you gonna do?
Yeah.
But I mean, if you don't mind a little bit of spoilers, like, I would say, and you haven't really, like, didn't really want to watch Legion, I would say listen to our podcast episode on that. You'd probably turn you on to Legion, and then you should watch it.
Yeah, Legion was fantastic. Honestly, probably one of the best television shows of 2017.
Yes, especially the visuals too.
Oh, the visuals were amazing.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, you know what? I'm just going to say it. It was the best television show of 2017.
Mm-hmm. Not movie, but television show.
Yes.
Yes. Yep. And it's on FX, right?
FX, yes.
Yeah. So, there. And now for my do-over one, I had to switch it up due to reasons. But I actually, and this is kind of funny because of what I would do over is actually on your top 10 list.
Okay.
I would do over Split.
Really?
But the only reason why I would do it over is because I don't feel that we gave enough attention and enough research to mental illness.
Okay.
And I really wish that we had done a little bit more about that before we recorded the episode.
All right.
Yeah.
But I think that we did talk about that a little bit in Legion as well.
Yeah.
We did talk about, I think we brought it up in a lot of places before, and including Doctor Strange, is, especially going and seeking help. That, don't worry about what other people are going to say. Don't worry about what, other people, think of getting help.
Yeah.
Just do it. Just get help. when you need help.
And think about it this way. Like, what's worse? Like, people talking about you not getting help, or you getting help and people talking about you getting help?
Yeah.
Like, that's how I think. But anyway, people are going to talk more positively about you getting help.
Yeah. Either way, people are jerks.
Either way, yes, people are jerks.
Okay.
Like, big jerks.
Yeah.
But anyway, we could talk about people being jerks all day. And then my number one, and I think this has to, it's a little bit one of our more emotional episodes. But it's also one of the ones that also has, it's another one of our big episodes that a lot of people listen to, was This Is Us, the pilot.
Yeah, that one was going to be on my top 10 list, but the reason why I didn't put it there was I felt it was a little self-serving for me to put it on my top 10 list.
Well, geez, thanks, Miguel.
Was because of that. Was because we were able to share our story. Was because the reason why we were able to share that we love This Is Us. Mm-hmm. And granted, season 2 has been, like, it's been good, but it hits that sophomore slump a little bit where it's kind of like, eh.
Yeah. And I'm mad at Kevin right now, but anyway.
Yeah, everybody's mad at Kevin right now. He really should just...
Kevin, just get help.
Exactly.
Anyway. I hope that didn't spoil it for anybody. That shouldn't spoil it.
He should get help.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because we just talked about how you need to get help when you need help.
Yes. Yeah, so it's not... Anyway. Sorry.
Yeah. But I really feel that we needed to get our story out there, and I think it makes us more real to people as well. Mm-hmm. And the reason why I didn't put it in my top 10 list was because, I really felt like, well, our conversation in Split, and I think that's where we really hit that important point of mental health. And yes, we did need to research it a little bit better, I think. But I also think that we would do a disservice of not mentioning. We did hit very well on the point of getting help when you need help, and the importance of that in that episode. So that's why it made my top 10 list, and it speaks to This Is Us, that pilot episode, because we talked about our necessity for help. Yeah. And I was going through help at that time, and so, with my whole going to therapy and everything else. I think that these were the reasons why these other episodes pushed that out of my top 10 list.
Okay. Yeah, you don't have to defend yourself, because nobody's list is incorrect.
No, I know.
It's just a list. But I do think it is important to keep mentioning that loss of pregnancy and infants is more prevalent than what people think. And so that's why it's on my list, because, well, luckily, that sounds terrible, but since our miscarriage, there has been a lot more celebrities who've come forward and said that, they've had fertility issues. They've suffered, like, multiple miscarriages as well. And I think that definitely has helped, because before, like, me even mentioning my miscarriage, or, like, people asking why I was upset and, like, talking about it, like, they couldn't understand why I was so upset. Yeah. And I think that having a bigger face to it, like Chrissy Teigen, like, coming out and saying that she also had a miscarriage, like, and also Mark Zuckerberg too, and his wife. Yeah. I think that it's becoming more acceptable to allow people to grieve for that, as they should. Mm-hmm.
And, well, let's, right before we wrap up here, let's quickly go into some of the things that are going on with the podcast and what our goals for 2018 with the podcast are. Very first off, I want to say that thank you so much for listening, even though, some of them, we don't have barely any listens to, like Happy Feet. That was a listener suggested one, and thank you so much to him for all the help that he's been. He's been a great help.
The listener who suggested.
Clinton.
Yes.
Yeah, Clinton has been a great help with helping us get the podcast going, with helping us get some more publicity. And I really think that people should give Happy Feet another listen because of him. And, he is just fantastic. So I just wanted to give a brief shout out to him and to say thank you so much for all your help. He's got his own podcast, St. Clinton. He's got spoken word poetry podcast. He's got a couple of other things out there. So if you want to check him out, he's also on Spreaker. So go give him a listen. But anyway, our goals for 2018, what I want to be one of my goals for this year is that I want to rebuild the computer that we were originally using to record the podcast on. That's why some of the first episodes were better audio quality and better processing quality. It's because we had a faster computer at that time, but that broke down, as you know, right before Legion. That's why we were sitting in the middle of the floor with the laptop. And so we have since kind of moved things around. And so it does sound a little bit better, but we're not really great sounding right now. So I really want to rebuild that computer. I really want to get our sound down. I really want to get that editing down, kind of well.
Yes.
So that we can get this, churned out and it actually sound a little bit more professional. So that's one of my goals for 2018 for our podcast, is to sound a little bit more professional.
Yay. Oh, and my goal is to do a little bit more, or take more time in researching the topics that we want to talk about. I know you think that we probably spend hours and hours and hours before the podcast putting it together.
Well, sometimes we do. Sometimes we finish writing it about 10 minutes right before we're supposed to record.
Yes. So that's my goal, is to take a little bit more time. Maybe as a result of this, the content might be a little bit more fuller.
Yeah.
Is what I hope. Not necessarily better. Like, I don't think our content has been bad. I just feel like we could make it fuller. More of a satisfaction sandwich.
Yes. And also, one of the last goals for this is to get more listeners. Obviously, that's every podcast's goal, but we have right now on average 13 listeners, and I'd say 13 because that's how many downloads and listens we get per podcast in the first 2 days. And so that's what I base it off of and that's, our lowest listen podcast usually is about 13. And so I'm guessing that that's the amount of people who are loyal listeners for us is 13. We'd love to get more. We'd love to have more people listen to us. We'd love to get more feedback from you guys and to see what you guys would actually like us to talk about.
And there's some easy ways to do that too. I mean, if you don't feel comfortable sending us a voicemail like we've been requesting, you could always go on to iTunes and just rate us. You can write a little description if you want, or you can just give us stars, whatever you prefer. Or you can also do that on whatever podcast system you prefer to use as well too. But we would appreciate that. That would be very helpful.
Yeah, and with that being said, we're also going to be changing our name. And so, like I said earlier, we were going to talk about this. We're changing our name to something that's going to be a bit more marketable. I realize that saying faith kind of comes with the connotations of Christianity and with all that kind of stuff. And I know that there are different forms of faith out there. And so we're going to look for something that, really speaks to what we do as a podcast rather than what we talk about. We've got a few names out there. We've got it in a survey. Check out the survey. The survey will be up for another week or two. But right now, what's winning is Patron Saints of Pop Culture. We'll just be changing the name, and that'll carry across with each carrier that you find us on. And so,
But we wanted to give you fair warning of the changing before we just changed it, and then you not wondering where we went. So with all that being said, we invite you to come and join the conversation. Bye.